And then we have the house. The house, housing. Housing. When you think about house, you know, what comes to mind is probably a home. House is something that is, I told us, that housing is something that is much more permanent. It's something that you're there for either permanent or for a very long period of time. That's a house. It's either permanent or a long period of time. A long period of time, that's a house. An apartment, of course, we know what an apartment is. An apartment, it's, you know, it's a building with maybe 1 or 2 bedrooms. An apartment is what we often hear. It's a building with probably 1 or 2 or studio bedrooms. Those are apartments that you go rent. You take a lease on it and you rent and use. A home is something that it's been owned by you. It's something that you don't have to pay monthly for. You own it. You know, it could be a mansion, of course. I put a mansion. A mansion is something that's gigantic, that is so big, that is humongous, that is a mansion. Something that is extra, that is out of the norm. That is a mansion. But then that's a home. It's something that is that you don't have to pay. It's your place. It's comfortable. Hut usually it's simple. Hut, a simple hut is a simple 1-story building. It's a simple home that, you know, that's just 1 story. That's a hut, which is small as well. Simple and small, and it's a 1-story building. And then, of course, we have the castle. The castle is where we have royalty that lives in. It's much more royalty, like, you know, the Queen of England, the King. That is a castle. It's mostly for royalty, a castle. And then a caravan is an extension of a wagon. You know, it's an extension of a wagon. That's a caravan. It's a moving house. It's a moving home. It moves because it's like a van, see, that has a home in it. I know, you know, vans you drive them, you move around. So it's like a moving home. A caravan is like a moving home. A moving home. Because it's like a van. Of course, we have condos. Condos are much more larger. Condos are much more, it's like an apartment, but they're just much more larger and has more facilities in them. Like you can find like a microwave, a gas cooker in them. Those are condos. They're much more expensive, but they're bigger, and they are much more, and their amenities there are more amenities than others. And then you have, of course, a villa. A villa and condos are almost the same thing. You know, that's part of a home, a villa. They're almost the same thing. And then you have a duplex. Du means 2, duplex. Duplex is a home that has 2 entrances. In other terms, they like have 2 living spaces. For example, you have a living room at the bottom. It must have stairs. So it's a home that is has a story building that has probably a living room at the bottom downstairs and a living room at the top. That's a duplex. So it's a home, a story building, and then has 2 living spaces, 2 separate living spaces. That's what you call a duplex. But if it has 3 separate living spaces, you can call them a triplex. But most often you will hear a duplex. A barn is a large, simple home, which is mostly used to keep food for animals, utensils for animals, and even to keep animals themselves. So it's mostly a home for animals. It's mostly for animals. That's a barn. You see animals like horse, sheep, goat sometimes. That's where they keep animal food, animal utensils like the rake, and so it's mostly barn to animals. And a nursing home, we don't have them in Africa, but you commonly see them in the Western world, the developed world. Nursing home it's a home, oftentimes for the elderly, especially the elderly that are not able to do a lot by themselves, and so or they don't easily remember certain things, or they're all just basically alone at home in a big home, and they want to go to a place which is probably smaller, much more secure. Then they go to a nursing home, and most nursing homes they offer certain facilities, but then but then there's an administration, of course, that cares for them, and then there's a medical team. So a nursing home is mostly for elderly. The barn is mostly for animals, and of course the rest. Castle is for royalty. Caravan is mostly for like the people that love to drive around. Those are for caravans, and then the other ones are the apartments. So when we talk about apartments, when we talk about rooms, what comes to mind in a room? Because all these have rooms, like like in a room, when you want to describe a room, of course you have a single bed. You can have a single bed, a single bed, a single bed. A single bed means just a room with one bed, period. Single means one. A single bed. Sometimes you have a double bed. A double bed. Double bed. Double bed could be either that the room has two beds, especially when you go to a hotel, they're going to ask you, oh, do you want a single bed or a double bed? You could say, oh, I want a double bed. So double beds oftentimes mean a room that has two separate beds, or a bed that can take two people. That is a double bed. A bed that can take two people, we call them a double, or we call them a twin bed. I told you guys during family that twin means two people. So it's either a twin bed, when you go to buy a mattress, you say, oh, I want a mattress. They're going to ask you, what kind of mattress? You say, no, a single mattress, one person. That's the kind of mattress they usually use in a dormitory, hostels, campsites. When you go, you have single beds. But then you can say, oh, I want a double mattress. I want a twin mattress. Twin means double, twice a single. That's a double bed. And then if you want, you can also say, oh, I want a queen size mattress, or a king size mattress, a king size bed. King is the highest, single is the lowest. So you want the single, or you want a king size. A king size is the highest, a queen size mattress, a king size bed. We have to know that about the rooms, about the mattresses. When you go to, to purchase a bed or purchase a mattress, you should be able to identify, you want a double or you want a twin, you want a king or you want a queen. It's the same thing even with the sheets, bed sheets. Bed sheets for your bed. You say, I want a queen size bed. I want a queen size bed sheet. I want a double bed sheet. So you have to be specific about what you want. You need to know the size of either your room, of your mattress, or your bed. When you're ordering for a hotel to make a reservation, oh, I want a king size bed. Or what do you have? Oh, we have the king size, we have the presidential suite. So we have the singles bed, we have the double bed, we have a crib, of course. A crib is for a baby. We call it a crib for a baby. It's a crib. That's a baby. A baby. It's a crib. Those are the rooms. And then what about the different terms when you have all this except for a home or a castle? Because I told you some of them you have to pay, some of them you don't. The different contracts of owning this. You have the rent. Different forms of ownership. You have the rent. You have the rent to own, and then of course you have ownership. Rent is the easiest one. Rent is the most often one that we see. Rent is simple. You pay money because of an agreement that you made, a lease agreement. So it's not yours, but you're using it. It's kind of yours because you have an agreement at the end of the month. Oh, I'm going to pay you $100 for my apartment, for my duplex. So you're renting the place. It's not really yours totally, but you're legally having it. And so you pay some amount of money. And then rent to own is you have an agreement. Let's say, for example, the apartment costs $1 million and you have to pay a certain amount for a certain period of time until you complete the $1 million, and then you get to own it. So though you're renting, but you're renting to own. And then again, it depends on your lease. It depends on your lease, on your contract. Lease is an agreement. It's a legal signed agreement. So it depends on what you signed. It depends on what you have as a contract. A lease. So it's rent to own. You're paying money so that after you finish the amount that was on the lease, and then you get to own it. And then the last one is ownership. Owner means it's yours. I'm the owner. It's my property. So ownership, it's mostly for homes or for castles. You know, ownership. Oh, I own it. It's my property. I don't get to pay money to someone at the end of the month. I'm not responsible. I don't have to take orders from someone, you know, because it's mine. Rather, I am the one that leased the apartment if I wanted to, or leased the home if I wanted to. So often, ownership is when you get a plot, you build your home, or you get a condo or an apartment and you buy it cash, or you pay it completely, and then you become an owner. So you have the different forms of contracts. You have the rent to own, and of course, you have the ownership. And then when all these are done, what are the different things like, you know, amenities? You hear people say amenities.